Hey, welcome to the Rocket and Raygun Awards. We are doing something very special because it is, of course, not just the end of the year, but it's also the end of the decade, and we've got lots of different games to look back upon. Today, the category is Best Action Game of the Decade, and that includes a lot of first-person shooters, third-person shooters, you know, stuff that gets us into the action quite a bit. Now, we've got our list of nominees. Before we get to those, though, we want to hear from the community.
This is tough, but I think it has to go to a game that I think took a lot of people by surprise and completely blew up, and the lore is still going and there's still new characters being released for it. I'm gonna have to go with Overwatch. Overwatch even surprised me. It's not something that I would normally jump into because it's a shooter, but it's also got MOBA elements to it. So there are a lot of layers there, a lot of complexity, a lot of heroes. There's life there. There's a lot of layers to this life, and for that reason, it has to go to Overwatch.
Our nominee for Best Action Game of the Decade is Overwatch.
I think this kind of goes without saying. I mean, Overwatch as an isolated game is beautiful. It's mechanically amazing. The games are short and sweet. The gameplay is engaging. But with Overwatch League and with the community around Overwatch, again, it sits higher among the rest of the games.
Overwatch for me, my kid plays Overwatch. I don't have a problem with him playing it. I think it's cartoony enough that I don't feel bad for him playing a first or third party person shooter.
I'm going with Overwatch, and this is coming from someone who doesn't usually play competitive online shooters, because I'm admittedly not the best at them. But what makes Overwatch really good is that every character controls differently. While some being more traditional in dealing damage, some are better than healing other characters, so there are different niches that you as a player can fit into, so you don't have to worry about knowing how to aim 100% perfect all the time.
Doom is my action game of the decade because it takes everything that I loved about the original, puts it through a meat grinder, and just amps it way the hell up. You start off on a operating table, you get up, and you know that your number one goal is to survive. There are all kinds of creepy, disgusting, giant demons, other bosses, terrifying mechanisms, and it's them against you.
Doom 2016 was a revival of a storied or classic franchise. Doom's been around forever, but it came back, and it came back with such aggressiveness.
Halo Reach definitely takes this one. Bungie ended itself on a high note, created one of the best games in the Halo series, and they haven't really been able to recover from that.
I'm going off the beaten path on this one. I am going to call my own game in for action game of the decade, and for me that's going to be Destiny 2. I don't know where to put it. I mean, it's an RPG, it's an action game, it's an MMO, but it without a doubt is the most I've played of any game in the entire decade was Destiny 1 and 2.
Another hard one. I know Halo Reach was on this list, Far Cry was on this list, Doom 2016 was on this list, but there was one game when I first started working at EP, I remember making some videos and Vic would rush into the room and be like, have you guys played Titanfall 2 yet? And I kept ignoring him, and finally, after a month after release, I sat down around Christmas time and I played Titanfall 2. And oh my goodness, was this such an amazing experience. Considering the first game never really even had a single player, Titanfall 2 for the single player experience alone was just so captivating, so much fun. And then I jumped into the multiplayer and it showed me that Respawn was, the talented team I thought they were. I was almost a little bit worried when they made the transition from Modern Warfare and started their own studio, but Titanfall 2 was the title where I was like, okay, EA's got a pretty amazing company here under their hands, and I'm praying that Titanfall 3 actually gets a release and actually happens, because I know the company's doing so well with Star Wars and Apex Legends, but 100% Titanfall 2, best action game of the decade for me.
My action game recommendation for the decade is Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 took all the good aspects from Titanfall, added a dope storyline, and then made it the absolute amazing shooter game that it is. The multiplayer is crisp. The Titan versus pilot mechanics are fantastic. You can take down a Titan while a pilot and vice versa.
Action game of the decade is going to go to Titanfall 2. I didn't even play the multiplayer suite. I just stuck with the single player stuff, and it's easy easily one of the best single-player games I've ever played this generation. From the giant robot stuff to the wall running to the mechanic where you take cover back in time, it really is innovative stuff, and I hope that Respawn gets a return to this franchise someday.
Dead Space 2. It was a really close one. There's a lot of really good games that came out in this decade, but only one of them has a big foam finger that goes pew pew pew. I'm gonna have to give it to Dead Space on this one.
All right, you guys, here are our nominees for the best action game of the decade. Halo Reach from 2010, Far Cry 3 from 2012, Titanfall 2 from 2016, Overwatch 2016, and Doom 2016. There you see, 2016 was a huge year for not just first-person shooters, but action games in general. Let's talk about Doom here for a second. Doom was an unexpected surprise because we didn't really expect it to be able to kind of win our hearts back as effectively as they were able to. They've tried variations of Doom over the years, but nothing has come close to the original in terms of impact and power and sheer sense of fun, except for this one. 2016's Doom is a standout title and an incredible experience. The same could be said for Overwatch, which was also a massive surprise. This one was definitely more focused on the hero-based components that Blizzard had put together and got us all thinking about all of these different characters and what their backstories were. But it was also just an approachable and an accessible first-person shooter that had characters that we could sink our teeth into and really kind of make our own, but also gave us lots and lots of freedom to kind of improvise and come up with different solutions and different strategies. An incredibly deep, multiplayer-focused first-person shooter and a terrific action game. It's not our winner, though. Halo Reach, which came out in 2010, was an incredible kind of side mission for Bungie. They chose to not focus on Master Chief with this incredible game and gave us a lot more kind of embellishment of the Halo mythology and a lot of the Halo backstory. Halo Reach is incredible, and it's amazing that in 2019 we get the remastered version of Reach to go back into. Very cool stuff there. Also, an incredible action game. We're also going to give a nod to Far Cry 3, which came out in 2012 and introduced us to Michael Mando's incredible character Voss, who was a complete psychopath, but also it was a kind of reinvention of a series that was already successful with its previous iterations. With Far Cry 3, Ubisoft kind of jumped into this whole new kind of way to approach Far Cry. Gave us lots of different bases to infiltrate, lots of different ways to approach objectives, lots of scenery to explore and examine, and lots of mystery to uncover. A crazy, massive, ambitious, beautiful game filled with really memorable characters. Far Cry 3 is an incredibly influential and fantastic experience. That's why it's on our best action game list right here. But the winner that we're going to give the award to is Titanfall 2, which also came out in 2016 and knocked our socks off. I, for one, was not expecting to be so captivated by a single-player campaign. Superb. And then you throw in all of the vastness of the multiplayer experience and all of the different ways that you can approach that and how much fun it still is to this day. It's very hard for me to think of a more enjoyable shooter experience than Titanfall 2, and that is why it is our best action game of the decade. Okay, we've got a lot of other videos for you to check out, not just this one. We've got all of the best of 2019 videos, and yes, because it is the end of the year, we've got a whole bunch of categories for the best of the decade, so please make sure you check all of those out. Thank you so much for watching.